Isn't it cute? Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I hope you had a peaceful day. And since Monday, we haven't seen each other. So I'm very happy to be back to report on actual factual news from, of course, United States, but also globally. There were so many developments, specifically in the past 48 hours. And as of late today, that I really want to bring up to your attention, because that is not being discussed either enough or not at all by the mainstream media. And I think it's time for us to dive in, because it does have several consequences. And so we're going to dive in, of course, into Trump's Asia trip. He's on his last leg of the tour in South Korea. Yesterday, he was in Japan. We're going to discuss what are those deals? Are there deals? What are those deals worth? Of course, he is presented with a lot of gifts and praise and all type of flattery. But constructively speaking, what is there? Then, of course, do we still have a ceasefire in the Middle East or no? Kind of looks like not. What's next? This morning, I attended a meeting with the Qatar's prime minister, Sheikh Mohammed Al Thani, and he is one of the key players in negotiating between Israel and Hamas and facilitating negotiations. And so we're going to hear from what he had to say to this topic as well. So again, let's dive in. There will be also national news, of course, news on Venezuela, news also on China and Iran working together, also news on Trump deciding on the fate of our troops, U.S. troops in NATO, especially in the eastern flank. Something that I tapped Canadian Prime Minister Carney so many times a couple of months ago, asking exactly the question, what you're going to do when this happens, and this is happening right now. So we're going to, again, talk about that. Let's say hi real quick. Hi, Jolene. Hello. Thank you for doing all this work. Oh, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for being here. Is Jolene or Joline? Jolene. Beautiful spelling. Hi, Michael. Hello. Thank you so much for being the Honest Plus member. Thank you so much, guys, for your support. Hi, Chris. Hello. Yes. Ukrainian colors and the hearts. I appreciate it. Okay. So first things first, and this was really interesting because at 8:30, I was at a meeting. If you're Honest Plus member, you join us on Zoom off the record on Friday. I'm going to tell you all the details because I physically can't do it publicly. But it was a setting, right, where you have the Prime Minister of Qatar, you have Qatar, as they call themselves, and others, from BlackRock to other key players, right? And then suddenly this news is being announced about Venezuela bribing Maduro's pilot to essentially divert the plane and bring him to US. And everybody's reading it in real time like, okay. So according to first, Euronews reported that, then Associated Press reported it, then New York Times reported it. The US agent attempted to bribe Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro's pilot to divert his plane for capture as part of a 16-month covered operation that ultimately failed. The tense offer, meant to entice the pilot with wealth, did not lead to Maduro's capture. Amid ongoing U.S.-Venezuela tensions, the United States currently offers $50 million bounty for Maduro's arrest. And this just goes to show how unprofessional this whole thing is. And you bribed his pilot, who first and foremost went to Maduro and told all this. But this is not the latest on Venezuela. And I'll get you up to speed towards the end of it, because that's where we're going to finish off, and which will lead to another deep dive. Russia is stepping into defense of Venezuela, certainly, because Maduro, I reported it last week, he signed a 10-year unconditional cooperation with Putin. And then you might wonder, is Putin going to help them as much as he helped Syria and Assad when he was about to be pushed out? I mean, yes, he offered him asylum, and Assad is sort of, living in Moscow, right? Being poisoned, reportedly, several times. But he didn't offer any protection to Assad. But with Venezuela, there's oil. So Putin is not interested, as much as they can do red carpets for each other with Trump and Putin, but he's not very much interested in giving up that oil to United States. So again, I'll report some news there, because I'm waiting also on some details to come up. So Trump is obviously in South Korea. Yes, we covered his visit to Malaysia first, with the dances, with all this. Then he arrived in Japan. He spoke to U.S. troops that are at the USS Washington. I wasn't live yesterday, so this is the picture. He also did the dances there. Quick look. So you get the visual. He spoke to the troops, and where he talked about anything from Biden being incapacitated to everybody pouring across the borders, but then saying he made America safe again, to you never had a leader, now you have a leader. Altogether, it was a rally. It was nothing, worth reporting in detail. What came out again, that, we have the big deal with Japan. Meanwhile, I posted it on socials. It's not a deal per se. It's a letter of intent. I mean, I did study law, but you don't really have to have studied law or political science to recognize a contract where you do have two parties that are agreeing to something in return for something, right? For a contract, you need parties, you need exchange of goods, of services in favor of payment, right, of some type. Or it could be pro bono, could be whatever, but you need exchange of services or goods. There is no exchange. They signed a letter of intent to discuss more on how they can broaden the scope of cooperation, for whatever that means. And that the same letter of intent is also with Malaysia. The same letter of intent is with Cambodia. The same letter of intent is with Thailand. The same letter of intent is also now with South Korea. It's a letter of intent. And I would love for media to call a thing a thing. It's not because you don't like Trump or you like him. We have to report on factuality of a document. It's a letter of intent. If I'm saying that I intend to marry you, right? It's not a marriage certificate. An intent to marry, that perhaps is an engagement. And still there, you still have an exchange. You give a ring, you ask, they agree, right? There's still some type of an agreement going on. But a letter of intent is like, I'm about to propose to you. Huh? Yeah? Okay. That's the stage we're at. It's not an engagement. It's not a marriage. It's definitely not all that. So, and then of course he is tweeting and tooting that he's getting billions of dollars, and then he goes into trillions of dollars. In Japan, he announced that we're getting $20 trillion into our budget. Our GDP this year is around $30.7 trillion. What do you think if we got 2/3 of our GDP as a boost into our system? Would you be not able to afford whatever you can afford, would the prices be going up and all that? So it's really not true. I'm just trying to, I will be the first to report if this is true, because that would be ecstatic. That'd be fantastic for us. But we have to keep it factual. Okay. So obviously he was flying also on Air Force One from Japan to South Korea. I don't want to show you videos. I know that you are very reactive to that as much as I am. So I want to read out factual quotes. There he said, I guess I'm not allowed to run, right? Because we keep continuing this discussion on the third term. And my question is, why? Yes, I was the one reporting also when he was asked, are you going to run? He said, well, it would be cute if I install JD Vance and then herewith become blah, blah, blah. Okay, that we need to mention because he was asked, he gave you an answer. And then this has to be followed up that no, we do have amendments that prohibit a third term, period, point blank. If he wants to amend the Constitution, if he wants to violate the Constitution, then we will be discussing his actions, and then the protests will follow, or legal, obviously, actions will follow, and the steps will be taken. But if we keep just getting this clickbait, and this is my ask to the media, why you keep discussing it as if it were a legitimate thing? He was asked about it again, and he said, okay, well, I read about it. I guess I'm not allowed to run. So we'll see what happens. What are you going to see what happens? First of all, we still have 3.5 years of this. Well, about 3 years of this, almost a year in. Let's bother with this. And he's of a particular age and stage and all, right? So, I mean, what are we talking about? Why you keep discussing it and being so enthused and so giggly about it? This is not fair. This is not reporting. This is political activism in favor of Trump for some particular reason. So why are you participating for this? Then disclose that you're a political activist. CNN, you're a political activist. Or whoever is reporting on that. Then you have to disclose, why are you doing this? What is your incentive? Right? Then he had exchange with the reporters. They asked him, what did you mean last night when you said you were prepared to send more than the National Guard into American cities? And mind you, I reported extensively in yesterday's newsletter, and if you're not subscribed, why? It has no paywall. Please subscribe. In fact, our newsletter is read by diplomats, heads of state, and different very important people. And I'm very glad for that. But also, I'm more so importantly glad that us normal people are reading this, because we need actual news, because all of these people are representing your views, and we have to ask them and demand to represent your priorities and your vision and whatever they sold you when they got elected, right? Regardless where you live. Whether it is United States, England, Germany, France, Netherlands today is voting for their parliament, or Timbuktu, doesn't matter. The structure is the same. You are selecting somebody because, yes, they're likable, but their ideas are corresponding with your vision. Yeah? And then when they get elected, you have to demand them to do what they promised to do. And the media is there to hold them accountable and to communicate between you, be the communicator between you, the electorate, and those who are elected. Same structure everywhere. This is how democracy works, right? So I'm not here. So that is my angle too, right? Why, as a media, I would be then saying, but he wants to stay longer. But this is not, first of all, he wasn't elected for the third term. Third term is not feasible. It is illegal. Why you keep tooting it? Then you're not the communicator between the electorate and those elected. Then you are a political activist on behalf of the current regime. Then have a runner like I have here. Please like and subscribe. By the way, please like and subscribe, okay, while you're here. It doesn't cost anything. So more people will get this through their algorithm. But then have a runner and say, we are a political activist of MAGA community. We are advocating for 500,000 terms for the Trump regime. If you did the same for Biden, you should have also disclosed that. But you did not. You did not do anything that wasn't even fair. So now, he was asked about National Guard, sending National Guard to more American cities. Mind you, as I reported again yesterday in the newsletter, We had a major hurricane. We still are battling. Jamaica got hit, but the strongest Category 5 hurricane, Melissa, up to that day specifically in that region, also very late into the hurricane season. Nobody sent National Guard there. Nobody sent anybody to evacuate people or help them or do anything. We had Central Kitchen sending people. We had meteorologists flying there on their own dime, covering things, trying to get some type of information. Other countries are participating, but we're not doing this. Cuba is about to get hit. Haiti was hit. So nobody's helping nobody. Meanwhile, you have a certain fleet of a certain size in the Caribbean deployed to scare the shit out of Venezuela. They're there. Your fleet is suffering because of that hurricane. But meanwhile, they're there and you're still not sending them to help, to extend a helping hand to those who are suffering. And then you have National Weather Service advising those people. Did you read that notice? Please wear a helmet and protect yourself with a mattress. Did you see the flooding they're dealing with? What are you talking about mattresses? So, about National Guard to American cities, Trump said, sure, I'll do that. As you know, I'm allowed to do that. And then you would think Media Question would say, how? Where is it written, black on white on whatever, that you're allowed to do it? What is your source? No. The follow-up question is, do you mean other branches of the military you'd set in? He goes, if it were, who are you with? The reporter says, the New York Times. Trump says, that's very good. Well, if you write it correctly, I'll give you the answer. But if I want to enact a certain act, and here he's talking about the Insurrection Act, I'm allowed to do it. I'd be allowed to do whatever I want. The courts wouldn't get involved. Nobody would get involved. And I could send the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. I could send anybody I wanted. No follow-up. And here's my ask to you, viewers. If you're still subscribed to the Times, to your cable, perhaps you're not even paying for a specific channel, but you're still watching it. You're paying these clowns to be on television and not to ask a single question. I just told you what the role of media is, for God's sakes, is to communicate. To be that organism that asks your questions to them, because you can't be on Air Force One. Not all reporters can be on Air Force One. That's why you have the goddamn press pool, where you have few cameras, few reporters, and everybody's chiming in to do the right? Or everybody pays for their own trip, but they alternate, so everybody has the same plus minus budget on press pool. This is the role of it. So if you subscribed, if you watch, if you click, you are giving them the budget. It doesn't cost you, perhaps, but you give them the budget to continue doing this shitty work. This is shitty. This is irresponsible. Now on China and fentanyl, reporter says, sir, what is China doing to justify removing fentanyl tariffs? Who is talking about? Anyway, Trump says, well, I think they're going to do things that, they have an industry that has to do with drugs. Reporter says, so China's going to be working with U.S. law enforcement on fentanyl? Trump says, China's going to be working with me. Reporter says, okay. What information did you get to your subscribers right here? At this point, I don't even know who the reporter is. What is it? You are a political activist on behalf of MAGA regime. That's what you're doing here. On meeting with Xi Jinping, Trump says, I don't know what we'll even speak about, whether we'll... he speaks weirdly, so let's again. I don't know that we'll even speak about Taiwan. Again, that's he told reporters traveling from Japan to South Korea on Air Force One. He continues, I'm not sure. I mean, he may want to ask about it, talking to Xi or about Xi. There is not that much to ask about it. Taiwan is Taiwan. Well, I beg China is, begs to differ. China thinks Taiwan is China. Taiwan is not Taiwan. And that is what you're supposed to be talking about, because Taiwan is also under this deadline by China to be invaded by 2027. Now, thankfully for Taiwan, and I spoke to Senior National Security Advisor. If you haven't seen that video, it's 10 minutes long. Please devote your precious time and listen to the facts. Listen to their National Security Advisor, who gave the answers as to how they're preparing, that it's not a question of why or when, not a question of if, it's when, how they're allocating the assets, the precious assets, away from Taiwan, and they're, making sure that they can defend themselves and what also to expect. So, for Taiwan, I mean, again, luckily for them at this point in China, if you perhaps have heard, she is firing generals, the leaders of all the branches of the army. He's looking for loyalists. He's declaring that they have done something anti-constitutional or anti-regime. There are rumors that they're being not just fired, but worse, if you know what I mean. But again, rumors, if we see credible reports, will talk about it. But they are firing people. So at this point, and even analysts are saying, China is not capable to invade anybody because they are having a shakeup. And Xi Jinping is trying to really seize control fully under him. Not just the CCP, the party, but really under him. He's looking for loyalists. So this causes delay, and this plays on to advantage of Taiwan. But we can't say Taiwan is Taiwan. Let's not talk about it. It's the same story. Oh, Ukraine is Ukraine. In the 90s, we signed this Budapest agreement, but who cares? Now Ukraine is invaded, whatever. Ukraine is Ukraine. Pay up, right? So, and then there was a moment in Seoul. Trump was talking again to reporters, and he said, I met with Mr. Toyota, and we had an amazing meeting. And I said, what's your name? Toyota. I said, you're rich. Trump also met with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung today on the final leg of his Asia tour. Today, our time, yesterday, their time. Please also keep in mind that Seoul is 13 hours ahead of us here, Eastern time. So, Lee presented Trump with the country's highest honor. And here's a picture. Well, no. Highest honor, the Grand Order of Mugunghwa, a medal usually reserved for South Korean leaders. He was also gifted with the replica of the ancient Golden Crown. This is how it looks like. He received the crown. It's one of the 6 crowns. It's the biggest one. Probably going to end up on his table at the Oval Office or on his head, because this is how Trump reacted to this highest honor. Take a look. Oh, it's a picture. Wait a second. I do have a video. Here we go.
I can wear it right now. Thank you so much. We'll cherish it. Thank you very much, everybody.
I'd like to wear it right now. And I think next time he's tuning in from Oval Office, fully bedazzled with his new gifts. And in Japan, he got the golf equipment from former Prime Minister, and that he inherited, so to speak, from him. The current Prime Minister is related to the one that was killed. And so she presented it to him. He presented to her as a gift 2 cappies that said, Japan is back. Well, she made sure to thank him online and all that type of story. They also watched World Series, and he said, oh, you got to cheer for U.S. You got to cheer for U.S. But in the U.S., I mean, I'm not a sports person, but correct me if I'm wrong. We do have a Japanese player who actually changed from a team that she's supporting, and she is a very big baseball fan, and she's cheering for Tigers. Whatever at this point. Now, back in Seoul, he gave this, I guess this is some type of a shrine wall to South Korean folks. It says never give up with his picture that he was taking at the police station. So, and there's Melania book, and there's all type of, I don't know, it's like a wall of shrine. Not sure if Korea presented it with him with this or whatever. Ultimately, he tweeted then, bringing back trillions of dollars to USA. A great trip, dealing with very smart, talented, and wonderful leaders. Tomorrow, President Xi of China. It will be a great meeting for both. President DJT. Now, earlier, Trump also addressed the APEC summit. Those are CEOs from South Korea and Asia altogether who were gathered there. He was very happy that he managed to pronounce the city where they're meeting. And I said Seoul, but no, they're meeting in different city. Take a look. He was very proud that he could pronounce
from Detroit to Da Nang, and from Cleveland to right here in Gwangju. Nice place. Did I do good with that one? Did I do okay? Gwangju.
Okay. In that meeting, he was talking, obviously, as you saw. He talked about groundbreaking agreements with Malaysia, Cambodia, and Japan, describing them as deals, but they are letters of intent, as I mentioned. He added that U.S. has pretty much finalized a trade deal with South Korea. They did not. Also, soon later, you'll find out what the current Prime Minister of Japan actually told him in that meeting, and this is very Russia-related. Stay tuned. He also said, we've lifted over 600,000 Americans off of food stamps. Well, that's a nice twist when you took $1 trillion from these people who rely on those food stamps for food. Which reminds me today in the conversation with Prime Minister of Qatar. He said, some things we don't play with is food, gas, electricity, and homes. Because he's part of the royal ruling family, Al Thani. They have the banks, they have the sovereign fund. We'll talk about it extensively on Friday, because that's what I heard. I'll tell you. But he said, well, but certain things we don't politicize. Because yes, they have a smaller territory. Obviously, it's a desert. You have Iran and you have waters. But small area, not many people, but still, there are priorities for people feeling well, actually, and we support small and medium-sized businesses, but ensuring they can go global. But then everything beyond, yes, we do trade, and they're trillionaires essentially. So, but some things are off the table. So, but no, not for Trump. Everything is on the table, which reminds me on this tweet. Take a look. So this is this is former official who worked for Trump, Miles Taylor. He worked for Trump through the first administration, right? And he mentions here, I was part of the internal Trump administration team trying to convince the president to end the shutdown in 2018-2019 for 35 days before people went hungry, workers lost pay, and government services collapsed. Here's what I learned. He doesn't give a shit. Okay. So, more Trump quotes. It's easy to create government jobs, he says. I can fake the numbers if I want, but that's not the way you build a great country. You don't say. That's what they used to do under the Biden administration, under Barack Hussein Obama. That's projecting. Same as Russia does. Ukraine is bombing us. They're bombing Ukraine. They would say, hire a lot of people so we can make our numbers look good. I do the opposite. These are real numbers. Yeah, real people who go hungry because they lose their SNAP benefits starting November 1st. And more. We should have the lowest interest rates of any country because without us, there are no other countries really. Really? Trump is scheduled to meet with Xi Jinping 11 a.m. local time in South Korea, which is 10 p.m. Eastern time. 7 p.m. Pacific. So this is coming up tonight in about 4 hours. China, as a precursor to this meeting, bought 180,000 tons of soybeans from United States as a sort of a grand gesture before the meeting. Obviously, Trump tweeted about it. He said, a big win, a big win. Everybody's celebrating a big win, a big win. So 180,000 tons of soybeans is roughly $72 million. This is, of course, gesture of goodwill ahead of Trump-Xi Jinping meeting. But they placed big orders with Argentina, whom we are bailing out for $40 billion. But regardless, Milei is being reelected. Well, his government is being reelected, and he keeps singing. But you know what numbers we're actually talking about when it comes to soybeans purchases from United States by China. So, for instance, in 2024, they purchased worth of 12 billion with the B dollars of worth of or soybeans worth of $12 billion, with the B. So 72 million versus 12 billion. You lost 12 billion. You just got 72 million. So you will be enthused about the meeting. That's all. So later, when Trump met with South Korean officials, he said, quote, "The welcome and the beautiful honor you bestowed on me as the only American president, that's really a great tribute to our country, not to me. It's a great tribute to our country, but I had it focused toward you as opposed to against you, which some people did." Did Biden do that when he created the IP4? When he created the entire infrastructure to protect the Indo-Pacific? Come on. Now, quotes that don't need context. Mike Johnson is here. And he's commenting on the priest who was shot in the head with a pepper ball while peacefully protesting outside the ICE facility. And Mike Johnson says the following, quote, "Religious freedom does not extend and give you the right to get in the face of an ICE officer and assault them," unquote. I guess assaulting with the presence, right? And then this is the weirdest timeline ever. So we kind of agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She puts this out. She says the Republican-controlled Senate used the nuclear option today to override the 60-vote rule in order to confirm over 100 Trump nominees, yet continues to claim Democrats are causing the shutdown. Spoiler alert. The Republicans in the Senate can also use the nuclear option to reopen the government and override Democrats, just like they literally did today when they confirmed the Trump nominees. And so, again, the weirdest timeline ever. Another thing that I wanted to show you, remember we talked about No Kings protests and that there are allegedly 7 million people, but then who protested, but it kind of felt like more, right? We did cover it from 48 cities. Thankfully, thanks to you guys who reported it, you all are invited for our Zoom meeting as well. Now, but it kind of felt more, right? And then so several channels ran this questionnaire, right? Who went to the protests on October 18th, right? And you see here, U.S. and adult citizens, like 8%, overall 16%, men 17, women 16, non-college graduates 13, college graduates 20, 18 to 29-year-olds 14, 30 to 44 11, 45 to 64 15, and 65 plus 25. And so if you put it all together, it's about 3 times as much. Just putting it out there. Another map I wanted to show, this is from New York Times. Those are the states where National Guard is being deployed. Okay. Leading to our national quick news. And before that, let me check some comments here because you got a lot. Everybody's chatting today. I like it. Picasso. Chris Winter said I think this was during Venezuela comment. Yes. Hi, Lynn. Lynn says, I don't think his health will carry him that far. I think he's just trolling, right? Yeah, about the 3rd presidency. But not all Trump is Donald Trump. Could be Ivanka, could be whoever, right? Mike says he wants to remain president because he wants to stay out of jail. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Lynn says, if anything, he would only want to stay because he garners the most attention and it's also very lucrative for him. Yes. Hi, Sean. Sean says, howdy, gang. Yep. Happy actual factual day. Yep. Lynn says, I truly believe he will see the presidency to the highest bidder. Yeah. Yeah, sell the presidency to the highest bill. Yeah. Michael says, I just read that the judge was wanting a specification about more than National Guard meaning. Yeah, and also they asked the, I think Illinois, right? ICE leader, whatever, who did the photo shoot looking like SS, also about using tear gas against journalists and protesters. Yeah. Steffi, hello, Steffi Lynn. I canceled cable a month ago and I don't miss it one bit. Right. I agree. Mark my words, if the government is still shut down at Christmas, there will be maggots uprising in the streets. Yeah, and we'll see. Okay. Lynn says Trump makes things up on the fly every damn day. Yes. The man can't remember, says Chris. Stuff that's more than a day ago, really. Someone probably hasn't talked to him about it to prepare him. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. Sean says Russia NATO funding agreement signed in 1997 in Paris, worth a Google. Yep, bedazzled. I will never see him different. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. Tariffs 10% now on what? Thanos, hello. Thank you for being here. But he probably thinks interest rates are numbers about how interested people are in the country. Chris, yeah, it could be. Could be. We also have this thing here. And then it works like wide, and you can do it big and medium. Oh, okay. Let's do it tall and big, whatever. It's options that I have here. All right. So, quick national news. Let's cruise through. The Pentagon has required officials involved in the growing U.S. military campaign off Central and South America's coast to sign new non-disclosure agreements. A move Reuters described as unusual. You don't say. Given existing secrecy protocols, analysts see it as a sign of tightening control over rapidly expanding and potentially controversial operations. Let's call the thing a thing. It's called invasion. Invasion. Yeah. Across the United States, air traffic controllers received $0 paychecks this week, their first missed payment since the month-long government shutdown began, highlighting the strain on essential workers forced to report without pay. So if you're planning and traveling for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and good luck to all of us, I guess this is how you get no tax on tips, right? I mean, they never get tips, but they don't get paid anyway. So meanwhile, OpenAI officially completed its restructure into a nonprofit. So now they can smuggle more, maintaining $130 billion controlling stake, $1 billion, right, in its for-profit arm. The company's complex structure is now central to debates about corporate accountability in artificial intelligence. Wait till they declare themselves some type of a diplomatic operations they can be looked at. In the private sector, Nvidia announced $1 billion investment in Nokia, marking a strategic move to integrate its chips into their upcoming 5G and 6G infrastructure. More on Nvidia in just a second. So, in Texas, Attorney General Ken Paxton filed a lawsuit against Johnson & Johnson, alleging the company failed to warn consumers of an alleged link between Tylenol and use during pregnancy and autism. And his source is RFK Jr., right? A claim widely discredited by scientists, but politically potent in conservative circles. A federal judge extended an order temporarily blocking Trump from firing thousands of federal workers amid the shutdown, reflecting the growing legal tension between White House and the courts. Polymarket, blockchain-based prediction market platform, announced plans to relaunch its in the U.S. within weeks. It's relaunching, right? As interest in political and event forecasting surges. And Polymarket was reporting, by the way, do I have this picture? Because I planned to talk about it yesterday. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Do I? No. They're running some prognosis for New York City mayor election, and Polymarket was predicting Mamdani to win, and now they're predicting Cuomo growing and Mamdani's share and votes going down. So all of this, anyway. So In the sports, of course, Toronto Blue Jays defeated Los Angeles Dodgers 6-2 in the Game 4 of World Series, tying the championship at 2 games apiece. Toronto's pitchers neutralized Dodgers star Otani, right? That's who I was referring to when I talked about the Japanese prime minister, who started both as hitter and pitcher. Now, at the same time, defense officials told Congress they would consider all options to reform the national security space enterprise, including partial mergers between Space Force and National Reconnaissance Office. And with the shutdown dragging on, airmen, guardians, and defense civilians remain uncertain about pay, while J.D. Vance said on October 28th that service members will be paid at the end of the week. Well, end of the week is in a day, but he didn't clarify how the administration will make that possible. And earlier this week, I reported that they're planning on getting any aid that the families are working with, the military families are receiving to use that as pay, so which wouldn't be really legal in that way, but we'll see. Now, remember, well, obviously Trump he demolished East Wing. He bulldozed over the Rose Garden. He's putting all the Hobby Lobby golden spray stuff all over the Oval Office. And there is actually a commission that oversees that. And they have 6 members. And they asked Trump administration to talk about it, what the hell they're doing. And they're planning on building this Arc de Trump and all that kind of stuff. As a consequence, Trump has dismissed all 6 members of the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts, the board responsible for overseeing federal architecture in Washington, D.C. The move comes as Trump prepares a slate of major capital projects, including massive White House ballroom and New America First design standards for government buildings. Quote, "We are preparing to appoint a new slate of members to the commission that are more aligned with President Trump's America First policies," the White House official told CBS News. The commission's previous members were appointed during the Biden administration, which itself had replaced Trump's original appointees in 2021, marking yet another chapter in Washington's tug of war over architectural symbolism and legacy. And honestly, we're just destroying history, right? So Apple briefly reached a $4 trillion valuation. Aren't you happy? If you're an investor, you probably should be, joining Nvidia and Microsoft in the ultra-exclusive $1 trillion club. Fueled by iPhone 17, looks hella ugly, by the way, sales in the US and China, the company's stock has risen 25% in 3 months, reversing earlier concerns about its slow entry into AI. But meanwhile, Nvidia had a big rise and continued as it became the first public company today to surpass $5 trillion in the market value, solidifying its dominance in the AI-driven economy and its leverage in the Trump administration's Asia trade negotiations. And Trump, got 15% from Nvidia, and Nvidia is $5 trillion? Get a calculator. Okay, quick global news. Voters in Netherlands headed today to the polls in pivotal parliamentary elections that could reshape the country's coalition structure and migration policy. It's becoming more dominant in Netherlands. The discussion of deporting people, not granting asylum, talking about TPS, prohibition, all that kind of stuff. So if you're from Netherlands, you probably are more informed. We're waiting on the results. And if they're already there, let me know. I'll look it up. Now, in Latin America, a Russian... Remember, I told you we're not done with Venezuela? Remember, I said that Maduro closed a 10-year deal with Putin, one-on-one? So, today, Russian transport aircraft associated with the country's military and Wagner mercenary group. Remember Wagner mercenary group that helped Maduro stay in power in 2009 by slaughtering people? And for that, Putin got the part of the national gold reserve from Venezuela transported to St. Petersburg that he now fully captures. Wagner group again. They landed in Caracas, Venezuela over the weekend. This was reported today. A clear signal of renewed Russian interest and coordination with the Maduro regime. Now, mind you, today's Thursday. Today it was reported that last weekend they landed. So 4 days in between now. The death toll from Hurricane Melissa that we talked about earlier rose to at least 39, including 29 in Haiti, 4 in Jamaica, and 4 in Dominican Republic, according to WX Fatalities. The storm continues to cause flooding and communication blackouts across the Caribbean. Now, in Vatican news, this was so, yeah, I guess unnecessary is the word here. The leader of an Eastern church from Chicago presented Pope Leo with Chicago Cubs jersey, forgetting, well, or purposefully forgetting, that Pope Leo's lifelong loyalty to the White Sox, a rare, if humorous, papal faux pas. But yeah, I think they're both from Chicago. I mean, he kind of knew. And do you remember pig looking like Orban? Hungary's Orban, who's very connected to Putin. He's on the side of Russia. He's creating, as I reported yesterday, hopefully you read it in the newsletter, that he's working on the anti-Ukraine aid coalition with Slovakia and Czech Republic. And EU is freaking out about it, but they don't do much about it. They're more concerned about now the helium-filled balloons that are coming from Belarus and crossing the border into EU. And now they're discussing, are we going to shoot them? We're not going to shoot them. We're not going to, again. First there were drones, balloons, not doing anything. But okay. Now, Orban is traveling. Do you know where? I'll let you guess. Hungary's Prime Minister Orban will meet Donald Trump in Washington on November 8th. According to Bloomberg, it has been verified. And here's why. The visit aims to discuss U.S. sanctions on Russian oil and how they affect Hungary, which remains one of the few EU members maintaining close ties with Moscow. So, as reported by Bloomberg, Trump will discuss with Orban how he can help Hungary to bypass the sanctions on Russia. And again, sanctions on Russia haven't kicked in yet. They will kick in from November 21st on. Please join me on Friday, just for all kinds of reasons. I can't do this here. We will discuss more, because I learned today more about the Lukoil and Rosneft situation. There's another major player in it. We'll talk about it. We're also going to talk about what's next for NATO bases in Europe, specifically American bases. Again, also verified, but we'll have to be cautious discussing it. So, Ponzi scheme, says Lynn. Yeah. Falcon Eye, hello. Venezuela is a sovereign country. They have a right to run it as they see fit. Yeah, but they also, you're right. But they also, of course, their leader is a dictator. But okay, people allegedly voted for him, but in fact, they voted for somebody else. And somebody else is not even, it's also right wing, and we see her, right, how she acts. But I agree with you that whatever U.S. does, I mean, bombing fishermen boats, alleging they're drug dealers, with no proof to it, whoever survives. Yesterday, one survived, had to be rescued by Mexico and be, transported to Mexico, but not here. They make sure they don't speak. The survivors don't speak, but we have reports from their families speaking. So whatever is happening is not legal, nor it is correct, nor it is being, I feel, treated the way it's supposed to be treated in the media and also with our allies, because nobody's speaking up. Everybody is, bringing up flattery and gifts. Mike says cringe. The only time U.S. should be initiating sanctions is in regards to humanitarian violations. For what? For Russia? Isn't that what they're doing with Ukraine? Do you think they're not doing enough to deserve sanctions? So, speaking of Russia, and this is what went on in that meeting between Trump and the new Prime Minister of Japan. So, Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi, firmly rejected President Trump's demand to cut energy imports from Russia, calling such a move counterproductive and potentially destabilizing Asia. Quote, "It would only make China and Russia happier," she reportedly told him. Two Japanese sources confirmed to Reuters that it would be very difficult for Japan to abandon Russian liquefied natural gas, the LNG, which represents nearly 9% of its total imports. Japan also remains a co-owner alongside Russian firms of the Sakhalin-2 energy project and Sea of Okhotsk, underscoring Tokyo's continued dependence on Russian supplies. So all the gifts and the gold cups and all that kind of stuff. But the tariffs were not lifted. There was no progress really on the tariffs, nor there was any progress on dependence on Russian oil, just to call it out. Meanwhile, Russian army did bomb another hospital, children's hospital, naturally, in Kherson, in Ukraine. The Kherson Regional Military Administration reported that Russian artillery strike hit a children's hospital, wounding 4 people, including a 9-year-old girl and 3 medical workers. The child suffered a shrapnel wound to her leg, while 1 staff member remains in serious condition. The hospital building sustained significant structural damage. Perhaps have a video of that. If not, we'll move on. No, I didn't upload. It's in your newsletter as well. So, and here's something that I think we have to talk about because nobody does, and it's kind of important. So, just to go back a few months, when the leadership in Canada changed and Prime Minister Carney was first appointed and then elected, I bugged everybody in NATO, specifically through various sources and abilities, bugged the Canadian leadership, saying, you have the biggest representation of forces in the eastern flank of NATO. Yes, Canadian forces are about 2,000 troops there. I think he's upping up to 2.5. But trading aside, this is the biggest representation in NATO's eastern flank. We do know that the Balkan states, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, are preparing for potential invasion from Russia. They are, they have already plans for evacuations, not outside the countries, but rather inside the countries, to clean out the roads for NATO troops to come in and defend them, right? So, and now we're hearing that the Pentagon confirmed plans to withdraw troops' presence in Romania. First they said reduce, then they said withdraw, and then they said this is one of NATO's key positions in the eastern flank. And my question at that point to Canada was constantly, you have the largest presentation there. What if US troops leaving you alone defending the Balkan states? What you gonna do? Who's gonna help you? What is gonna happen if one ally within NATO goes against the other? So officials cited here the need to refocus defense priorities toward homeland protection and Latin America. So they want to use the troops located in Romania protecting eastern flank of NATO for Venezuela. Now we're talking not just about 6,600 troops that we said, well, was not enough to invade Venezuela. Now we are getting trained NATO forces out of Romania that were training with Ukrainians that are, meeting the moment, so to speak. So, signaling a subtle strategic shift away from Europe despite ongoing regional tensions, which obviously opens the road for Russia to go into Balkan states and puts Canada in a very tricky position. And then what if something happens in the Arctic? We're going to talk about that on Friday. What then Canada is going to do? If you're stuck with Balkan states, you have long-term agreements there, your safe act with the EU and already yet, who's going to come to the Arctic? Because we see Xi Jinping is not meeting with Carney. He's supposed to meet. Yes, there will be deals. I mean, it's rumored that Canada will lift 100% tariff on the Chinese EVs. For that, China will lift tariffs on pork and oil and all this stuff. But altogether, Xi Jinping is very interested in Arctic. so much so that he proclaimed China a near Arctic state, which is geographically is questionable. So, but he's more interested in collaborating with Putin, and Trump obviously is kicking this off. So will that be used as leverage to decrease tariffs on Chinese products? We'll see on that. But certainly Carney is not part of this conversation at this point. So interesting development. Now, also what's interesting, The Atlantic, a very sort of reputable source, they concluded an analysis that the United States is unlikely to sustain a prolonged war with China, if that, God forbid, were to happen, not because of military weakness, but due to diminished industrial and technological base. Modern wars, the piece notes, are won by nations that can outproduce, out and innovate, and sustain their forces. China's manufacturing dominance from ships to drones gives it a decisive long-term advantage should conflict ever erupt. And for that, why doesn't US use Ukraine, right? Ukraine is advanced in drones, innovation by necessity, at scale and at speed. So now, also another interesting, when I posted, I don't like fear mongering anyway, but I said let's talk about several issues that media is not covering. It's time to talk about it. It's time to talk about whatever we're talking about, and specifically this here is interesting. CNN reported recently that Iran has been reviving its ballistic missile program, importing over 2,000 tons of sodium perchlorate, a key rocket fuel component, from Chinese companies since September of this year. The shipments arriving through Bandar Abbas port come despite renewed UN sanctions. Analysts believe the materials are meant to replenish stockpiles depleted during Iran's 12-day war with Israel earlier this year. Several firms involved are already under US sanctions, but they're bypassing it. And today, the Prime Minister of Qatar said that, as much as they don't like Iran, and that's their adversary, they still share, they're close to each other. And they said, well, I'm sitting on a big, let's say, source of gas, but they're sitting on the other end of the same source of gas. So in my interest is not to have a big conflict there, nor it is in my interest for them to have any nuclear power aside from anything that you can use for clean energy or that some sort. So they're very much involved in this negotiation here, but Qatar works closely with China, also connected with BlackRock. So in that regard, how's that gonna go? Leading to the ceasefire in Gaza. So less than 3 weeks after ceasefire, Israel launched airstrikes on Gaza following what it called a major violation by Hamas, which allegedly killed an Israeli soldier. Prime Minister Netanyahu ordered powerful strikes, killing at least 104 people, according to Gaza hospital officials, the deadliest day since the truce. And I have here from UN Chief Guterres, he says, UN Secretary General has strongly condemned the killing of civilians, including children, in Israeli airstrikes across Gaza overnight into Wednesday, calling for all parties to uphold their commitments to the fragile ceasefire. Do we still have it? That's questionable. So, Hamas was required to release all Israeli hostages, but has so far returned only 15 of 28 bodies. Now, Trump, when asked about it, said that they're lacking equipment, they're lacking capability to bring those bodies and find them specifically. But Israel doesn't see it that way, or at least uses it as a precursor to launch an operation. At today's Council on Foreign Relations meeting where I was, right, the Qatar's prime minister says that he helped to broker the deal. He said what happened yesterday, and he referred to attack on Israeli soldiers, was a violation, and there will be a response to that. He added that the ceasefire still holds, but called the situation frustrating. Qatar's focus now, he said, is to protect the ceasefire and ensure its full implementation. He also talked about the situation where Witkoff and Jared Kushner came to Qatar, and they said, oh, we're going to discuss the prisoner exchange. And he said, okay, so where do you want to start? And they're like, so we'll be done in like 2 hours. He said, we've been doing this for years at this point. It really matters who is being released from Israeli prisons, right? The Palestinian prisoners. There's somebody who is very willing to rebuild Palestine and make it more so democratic. He is being detained in Israel. Israel doesn't want to release him because he could become a very dominant fixture aside from Hamas with support of Qatar. So Israel is very much not willing to release him. This was one of the topics discussed today. But it just goes to show how they're so interested in Trump Gaza, obviously, and they came in, this was going to be in 2 hours, which reminds me on sort of Russia, right, when they wanted to get Kiev in 3 days, and the soldiers, right, based on the bags that Ukrainians found, they came in with whatever equipment plus their military parade attire, right, and there was this infamous at this point schedule, right? Take over Kiev, parade by lunch, right? Lunch, then parade. So, yeah. Now, I wanted to also, some updates on climate numbers based on UN. But first, let's check some comments here. Michael says, maybe that's why he's bullying Venezuela to have an excuse to move the troops out of Europe. Yes, and it's related. And Michael, I'll see you Friday on Zoom. More on that too. There's more. The thing about Caribbean illegal actions is their loyalty test to officers and troops. Those who get out of that unfired will see Mexico and Canada operations. Zionist Israel restrained the conflict. No surprise there. I'm not digging into Zionist or not Zionist. You have to see the Netanyahu regime for what it is. It's I wouldn't say it's very pro-Israel. It's very pro-Netanyahu himself. And he's trying to stay out of prison, which is evident. Now, how can killing hundreds of civilians be considered a ceasefire that holds? Not at all, Chris. Not at all. As usual, okay. I see your point. There's also something to consider. Yeah. Okay. So on climate. So UN climate chief Simon Steele said this week that if all nations fulfill their newly announced climate pledges, global emissions could decline by 10% by 2035 compared to 2019 levels. But don't forget that the new agenda by this administration in the US is to drill, baby, drill. So that kind of goes against it. Now, here it marks the first time UN has projected a steady decline in new emissions, but Steele warned the progress remains far from sufficient to meet the international target of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is 2.7 Fahrenheit. To reach the goal, emissions would need to fall by at least 60% by 2035, requiring radical acceleration in clean energy deployment, a sharp reduction in fossil fuel use, and major new investment in climate adaptation, which again goes really against the U.S. Vision at this point. Now, what did happen at the Asian Summit, ASEAN, right, between China and them? So they did close a trade pact, and this was actual agreement and pact. China and Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which what ASEAN stands for, have formally expanded their free trade agreement to remove barriers for green and digital products, deepening economic cooperation across one of the world's fastest growing regions, which is really a hit on the US, because when we discuss tariffs, I usually point out that we export in the US so much software that if we were to count it into this trade, whatever, debit, credit, or balance sheet that Trump's White House is putting together, we actually would be in surplus, because based on our strategy, for the last decades, we build up China and other countries as our production facilities. So we buy more products than we sell, but we sell way more services and software. Now, this here is something where altogether Asian countries are trying to fulfill the need without relying fully on US. So the new provisions are designed to facilitate the trade of renewable energy technologies, electric vehicles, and digital services, underscoring Beijing's push to strengthen its economic footprint in Southeast Asia. Despite the upbeat tone, the talks were not without tensions. The Philippines, for instance, a key Asian member or ASEAN member, publicly criticized Chinese maritime actions in South China Sea during the same summit, a reminder that geopolitical frictions remain even as economic ties grow stronger. And mind you, they grow stronger because U.S. is pushing China, pushing everybody in China's arms. We're even pushing Canada in China's arms. So, I mean, now, Okay, I have a Hurricane Melissa update that hit Cuba, made landfall early Tuesday morning as Category 3 storm, which with sustained winds of 115 miles per hour. This is per U.S. National Hurricane Center. The storm, which already devastated parts of Jamaica and Dominican Republic, knocked out power and internet access across wide swath of the region. And to Ethiopia's Red Sea ambition, so Ethiopian Prime Minister Ahmed reignited regional tensions by calling access to Red Sea inevitable for his landlocked country, a statement that immediately drew sharp condemnation from Eritrea, which borders to this strategic waterway. They labeled his remarks as reckless, warning they could destabilize an already volatile region. Now, then there is also the war in Sudan, right? It is one of those 100 wars or whatever Trump solved. Meanwhile, it's not really the fact here. So Sudan's RSF militia captured El Fasher, the last government-held city in Darfur, marking a turning point in the 18-month civil war. The war began in April 2023, killing tens of thousands and displacing millions. While the army retook Khartoum earlier this year, the RSF solidified its hold on Darfur. U.S. intelligence believes UAE arms deliveries to RSF have increased, despite denials from Abu Dhabi. Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan accused RSF of mass killings of civilians. Also, UN agencies and the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab reported executions and ethnically motivated killings, raising fears of another massacre like 2023. So none of it is over. And certainly it reaches a new stage. And there was also about Pakistan. Do I have it here? Oh, yeah. Failed Pakistan Afghanistan. Remember Trump talking about Pakistan Afghanistan deal and how he solved it and this peace. And then he started replacing Cambodia and Armenia and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, initially, he talked about Pakistan Afghanistan deal. So, negotiations between Pakistan and Afghanistan, hosted by Turkey, ended without a breakthrough after 4 days of discussions aimed at restoring calm following recent border clashes. Pakistan's information minister confirmed that no agreement was reached, while the country's defense minister warned Islamabad would retaliate against any new cross-border attacks by Taliban forces. Although no fighting was immediately reported after the talks collapsed, both sides remain on high alert. Observers say the lack of progress highlights the fragile relationship between Taliban government and Pakistan, which has accused Kabul of harboring militias responsible for attacks inside Pakistan. So again, none of those wars, or at least not this one, has been solved, and the peace in the Middle East still unfortunately remains some type of illusion. So, and that's it. What else do I have here? I do have a video of, what is it? I think it's Haxeth meeting with the defense minister of Japan. By the way, Haxeth is on his own Asia tour. First, he landed in Hawaii, and then he went to Japan and South Korea. So he's meeting with defense ministers, and his main message is buy more from us. That's essentially what he says. There's no security guarantees as to we will collaborate in case you are being threatened or invaded. It's more so buy more from us type of story. So that's it. Okay, I promised a full readout. We did a full readout. Falcon Eye says, what happens when people go into survival mode? You figure out with what you have, and how to overcome your obstructions. Every country U.S. punishes growth with being more self-sufficient, right? And relying on partners that perhaps they wouldn't be relying on, right? As I mentioned, Canada's idea was not to fall into the arms of China, but we'll see, right? And it becomes the necessity. And to your point, you're absolutely right. It's survival and adapting, right? Who can adapt will survive. And that's sort of the notion when I speak to any diplomats. That's the notion, right? You're driven by necessity. Yes, you are mourning the state of loss, where United States is no longer the insurer of stability and peace in the world, but you have to adjust to protect yours, right? Your country, your assets, your peace, your sovereignty, your partnership, your allies. So yeah, it's just the necessary evil that comes as a consequence. Okay, thank you again for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. Please like this. Please consider joining Honest Plus. You can choose any level, whatever. Main point is you'll be invited to our Zoom meeting. It's every last Friday. This time is on Halloween at 6 p.m. You can come up dressed. And every Friday we also have deep dives, and we have already several videos on BlackRock, on who sponsors China, Russia currently. Did a deep dive on all this shadow fleet and what money comes in and out and from where and to whom. To that, I will add more on Friday. And the first one, we also had deep dive on the Chinese embassy. So more will be followed on Friday. So I hope to see you there. There will be people who want to see you and discuss with you. So be like-minded and safe. And that's pretty much the most important thing here. So again, thank you for being here. Yes, take care, Falcon Eye. And have a peaceful night. Keep your head on a swivel. Consume information that makes you more wise and not more anxious. And I'll see you back. Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for being here. It's over an hour. Appreciate you and your time. And your newsletter is coming in a second. We'll have just to proofread it and send it out. And then tomorrow I'll see you at 5:30 around that time. Okay? So where is my cover? Here's my cover. So have a good night.